Grisly Tales for Gruesome Kids, The Me Monsters by Jamie Ricks. Today's story is called The Kingdom of Wax. I know a boy who can't sit down. Actually, it's not just sitting down he has trouble. He has trouble standing, squatting, lying, running, leaning, jumping, skipping, turning, sliding, hopping, pointing, smiling, winking, nudging, tapping, flicking, opening a can of beans. Just about the only thing he can do is drip. Nathaniel was born on the 25th of December, which meant that his parents got all excited and thought they were being rewarded for being such regular churchgoers. "Rewarded?" said the vicar. "In what way?" "Isn't it obvious?" said Nathaniel. "Isn't it obvious?" said Nathaniel's mum. "Our son was born on Christmas Day, therefore he is important." The churchman frowned. Oh, come on, vicar. You know, he is more important than other kids because he's a bit like another baby born on Christmas Day." The vicar spluttered into his cup of tea. "You're not suggesting..." I'm not suggesting anything," said Nathaniel's mum. "I'm saying he's a bit like Jesus." "Are you serious?" gasped the vicar. Nathaniel's parents, with their whiter-than-white lives, were always serious. Because of the date of his birth, Nathaniel's parents had listened intensely to every word that their son uttered. When he said, "Goo goo gaga," or "Nathaniel want potty," they wrote it down in a big black book so that future generations could study his words of wisdom. When he said, "Can I have a tattoo like Trevor Pondlife?" He looked into his bedroom and told to wear sandals. When his little sister Pets fell sick, he was made to hold them in his healing hands until they were better. They all died, but he still had to do it. And while other children were playing football or flirting, he was whisked off to church 7 days a week so that he could learn all about his other father, God. Every evening before supper, Nathaniel's parents dressed him in his Sunday best, smoothed his hair with palmfuls of spit until it lay flat like the slicked-down coat of an otter, and trotted off to church for an hour of Bible readings and sermons. Afterwards, they would descend into the church crypt, down amongst the stone tombs, when Nathaniel's parents built a wax museum. To the glory of God, it was called The Kingdom of Wax, and was an unusual place to say the least. They had made wax figures of all the modern celebrities standing around in Bible poses, so the nativity scene in the barn had David and Victoria Beckham as Joseph and Mary, and Wayne Rooney providing the face for the baby Jesus. Adam and Eve were Peter, Andre and Jordan, while alongside them in the jungle stood the troublesome sons Cain and Abel, as depicted by the bald brothers Phil and Grant Mitchell from EastEnders. Noah and his wife were Sir Steve Redgrave and Ellen MacArthur, and Moses, who was chosen to lead the Israelites into the Promised Land, was fleshed out by Joe Marino. The idea behind the museum was to bring the Bible stories to the people, especially young people, and to make money for the church. Nathaniel found the place creepy, especially the figure of Jamie Oliver feeding the 5,000 with his fish-gutting knife in his hand. His cold eyes followed Nathaniel whenever he went and convinced the boy that the waxworks were alive. By the time Nathaniel was 10, it was clear that he was not very good at being another Jesus. He was always clean and polite, as his parents demanded, but he wasn't a miracle worker. He could only turn water into wine by adding blackcurrant juice, and he couldn't walk on water to save his life. He tried it at the local swimming pool. He sank to the bottom like a stone. From that day on, the lifeguard insisted he wore armbands. Then, 40 days after his 11th birthday, the neat and ordered life of this ordinary boy went into free fall. A me-monster crawled under his skin and turned him sour. It all started because the head mistress made an announcement at Monday Assembly. Ahem! On Friday night, she informed her pupils, there is to be a strictly fever leavers ball for all year 7s. There was a hum of excitement in the hall. Only this year, we are doing it a little differently, she said. The girls will be choosing their partners, so it's up to the boys to impress them, and if they don't, well, the boys aren't invited. It was as if somebody had flicked a light switch in Nathaniel's brain. He had never thought about girls before, but now the prospect of being chosen by one, maybe even touching one, sent the Bible boy into a hot, mucky sweat. The hormones kicked in, and by supper time he was a different person, a rebel. I'm giving up church, he announced to his mother and father. I have better things to do with my time than being godly. This is the devil talking, said his mother in a whispering hiss that crackled with dread. No, it's me, said Nathaniel. I shall no longer be wearing my hair in the spit-down slick, or my suit with 3 gold buttons. From now on, instead of devoting my life to being Jesus, I shall devote my life to being attractive to girls. I knew this would happen if we sent you to school. She trembled. What's wrong with girls? Nothing, shouted Ruth, his lippy little sister. We're made of honey and donuts, and they are quite the most delicious things on the planet. Be quiet, boomed their father. Girls are temptation, Nathaniel. They will lead you from the path of righteousness and distract you from your purpose here on earth. Oh, my purpose here on earth, mocked the boy. Remind me what it is again? Before the me-monster arrived, he would never have dared to speak to his father like that. To live a life of goodness, came the thinly controlled reply. To forego life's fatal frippies, such as vanity, money, fashion. Resist temptation, exclaimed his mother. Or pay the price, for where there is a sin, there is always a price to pay. I like to think there's a price to pay, even if no sin's been committed. Keeps it fairer that way. Nathaniel left his parents frothing in the kitchen and took his sister up to his bedroom for a secret talk. Are we playing hide and hide, she asked. Is that why we're both lying under your bed? No, he whispered. I don't want Mum and Dad to hear the thing is, Ruth. I was wondering if you knew what girls like in a boy. I don't know, she said proudly. Girls like the pointy end of a pencil in a boy, or a compass, both hurt. No! What do girls find attractive in a boy? Oh, I see, she said. What do girls like in a boy? That's a tricky one. You want something that all girls like. Yes? Nathaniel was being patient. Apart from chocolate and baked beans, which incidentally, sniggered Ruth, make rude girls do windy puffs. Apart from those, yes. Well, after a long consideration, I think girls like a beautiful face, which I have to say you are going to struggle with, and a nice jacket with deep pockets that are always full of ice cream. Nathaniel was no nearer to discovering the secret of girls than he had been half an hour earlier. What he did discover when he woke up the following morning, however, was that what girls didn't like. He was scraping the sleep from his eyes in the bathroom when he caught sight of his fringe. Normally it was slick spitted to his scalp, but on this particular morning it had sprung up like a bonnet of a car. Oh no, he thought. Mother and father were right. I'm going to be punished for thinking about girls. My hair has sprung up to stop girls finding me attractive. His parents confirmed that this was indeed the situation. This is a punishment from a high of your godless behaviour, says father, in a voice charged with disappointment. Chasing after girls and ignoring your devotions, switched his mother, is a deadly sin. It certainly seemed like a punishment when he walked into the playground later that day. The girls laughed heartlessly and cried, Bedhead, bet that you wish you were dead. Nathaniel had never felt less attractive to girls in his life. It did not escape his notice, however, that the boys who successfully caught the girls' eyes all looked the same. They had fixed their hair into impossibly high hair stacks, climbing into 6 inches into the sky, and sweeping forward like a giant waves. Psst, what's your secret? He asked a boy with his arms around 3 girls at the same time. Wax in it, he slurred, without moving his lips. Gel is hell, but wax is max. This presented Nathaniel with a problem. Up until now, his parents had banned him from visiting such cesspits of immortality. As chemists and market stalls, not only did he not know where to find this wax, but he had no money to buy it. Pocket money, his father had shrieked 2 years earlier when Nathaniel had asked him for some. Never. Look what happened to the prodigal son. Pocket money didn't do him any good, did it? This meant that when Nathaniel finally found this wax, it would have to be free. Free wax, where should he look for that? 9 hours later, as the church clock struck midnight, Nathaniel slipped out of his bedroom into the starless night. There was a window at the back of the church that was always left open for stray cats. The vicar let them kip over in return for keeping down the rats in the crypt. As it happened, this was where Nathaniel was headed when he squeezed through the gap between the still and frame and dropped into the vestry. The kingdom of wax was in darkness as he tiptoed down the steps. The floor of the crypt flickered with shadows, and somewhere, amplified by the stone walls, a slow trickle of water dripped into a tin bucket. Nathaniel switched on his torch and flashed it around the room. Hidden eyes sparkled in the dark as the light hit the glass pupils. Then a flash from a fish-gutting knife and a glint from a polished apple in Eve's hand. Nathaniel was not planning to steal a whole body, just enough so that nobody would notice. An ear from the Good Samaritan, a nose from Judas Iscariot, some fingers, or maybe a kneecap from a leper. This was the beginning of the end. In pursuit of self-worship, Nathaniel had turned himself into a thief. Back home, he placed the wax body parts in a casserole dish, put the casserole dish in the oven on low heat, then went back to bed. 3 hours later, he rose before anyone else was awake, took the casserole dish out of the oven, and using the side of the kettle as a styling mirror, worked the melted wax into his hair. He had to work quickly before the wax set, but after only a few minutes, he had managed to stand his hair upright. Then he washed the casserole dish, put it back in the cupboard, and went upstairs to get dressed. "What have you done to yourself now?" wailed his mother. When she caught sight of his hair at breakfast, he was trying to hide it behind a newspaper. It was like this when I woke up," he said. "Covered in wax?" she thundered. "There is a devil in you, Nathaniel." "To be sure," roared his father. "You will fry in the flames of the eternal damnation." On his way to school, Nathaniel was amused by his parents' reaction. It was obvious to him that what they'd said was nonsense. Nobody fried in the flames of eternal damnation for trying to look their best for girls. He wasn't so sure about stealing, though. He'd heard the devil was quite a stickler on theft. Not wrong there. So don't get caught, he told himself. Of course, the need for more wax could have been avoided had the girl come forward there, and then to choose Nathaniel as her date. But none did. This was because the other boys had raised their game. Instead of just having big hair, they had opted for hair sculptures to lure the ladies. They had moulded their hair into unusual shapes. Mopeds, toadstools, and even crouching squirrel. By comparison, Nathaniel's straight up and down hair looked horribly old-fashioned. Which was why, by the end of the day, he was still dateless. So, that night, he stole a little bit more wax and hoped that nobody would notice. As he took a knife to Gary Lineker's ears, however, he heard a noise behind him. "Who's there?" he called out. No reply came. Just a squelch and a soggy plop that sounded to Nathaniel like a wax foot separating from a stone floor. And taking a pace forward towards him, he didn't wait to find out if he was right. Back at home, the rest of the night followed. A familiar pattern. He heated the wax in a casserole dish, went to sleep, woke up, and moulded his hair into the shape of a horse's head. He had wanted to mould a lion's head, but the wax had set off before he could shorten the nose. But then he washed the pot, lied to his parents about waking up with his hair in the shape, ignored their cries of "it'll all end in flames," and rushed off to school to strut his fetlocks in front of the girls. Sadly, the horse impressed no one, and at the end of the day, he went home dateless again. So that night, he stole a little bit more wax, and hoped that nobody would notice he relieved J.K. Rowling of her hands. Ran out before the spooky footsteps could catch him, melted the hands in the casserole dish, went to sleep, woke up, shaped his hair into a cheeseburger, because he'd noticed that girls really liked cheeseburgers, washed the pot, lied to his parents, and ran to school. He was still not chosen. Come Thursday night, he was desperate. There was only one day left to be picked, and his chances were not looking good. The only girl who had still to choose her date was One-Tooth Tina, and she was notorious for hating boys. Her passion was rugby, which was how she lost all her teeth. But Nathaniel's hormones weren't choosy. If One-Tooth Tina could be persuaded to take him to the ball, then he would go. So, he was careless in his desperation. He took more wax than he needed. Not just Peter Andre's feet, but Sir Steve Redgrave's nose, Ellen MacArthur's smile, David Beckham's six-pack too. Then he ran in terror from the moving shadows, melted the wax into the casserole dish, went to sleep, woke up, sculpted his hair into an object that would attract One-Tooth Tina, and lied to his parents at the breakfast table. "What's happened to your hair now?" they gawped. "The Lord moves in mysterious ways," said Nathaniel, his hairdos to perform. "I think you'll find that God has a secret desire to be a hairdresser and practices on people when they are asleep." "How dare you take his name in vain?" roared his mother. "May you burn in hell for that remark." "So you keep saying," said Nathaniel, heading for the door. "But I'm still here, aren't I?" Once out on the open pavement, strong side winds buffeted his 15-foot hair sculpture as he took a new route into school to avoid low bridges. The waxed-up hair sculpture worked. Nathaniel had finally got his girl, attracting One-Tooth Tina with his scaled-down replica of Twickenham Rugby Stadium. But that night, when Nathaniel should have been having the time of his life with Tina, his carelessness came home to roost. Just before he left for the ball, his parents staggered back from the church with pale and tortured faces. "Somebody's broken into the crypt," whispered his mother, "and mutilated the waxworks," his father wailed. "Why would someone do such a thing?" "I don't know," said Nathaniel, sitting there with a stadium on his head. "What are you wearing?" cried his father, spotting the waistband of Nathaniel's boxers peeping over the top of his jeans. "That's rude. I'm going to a leavers ball," he said. "What's this?" The sudden ferocity of his mother's voice stopped the kitchen clock. "What's what?" asked Nathaniel innocently. "This casserole dish on the cooker is full of wax." Nathaniel froze. Tina's stadium had taken so long to construct that he had forgotten to wash it up. Now he had not only been caught stealing, but lying too. "Right!" That was his mother. "Come with me." Then, with twice the strength of Samson, she dragged him upstairs, ignored his cries of, "But I will go to the ball," pulled him out of his jeans, forced him into his suit with the 3 gold buttons, and plunged him into his head into a bar full of cold water. Her aim was to wash his hair and flatten the stadium, but Nathaniel had massaged it in so much wax over the last week, that every strand of his hair was water resistant. You'll go as you are, she growled. Go where? Said Nathaniel, but he knew where his parents were taking him. He could tell from the direction the car took when they reversed into the road. He was being taken to church to repent his sins in front of God. When Nathaniel entered the church, it was as if he had come with his own personal tornado. The doors slammed shut behind him, and anything that wasn't nailed down was picked up by an invisible hand and hurled across the nave. What's happening? cried Nathaniel's father, as Heim book swirled around his head. Our thieving son has woken the demons of hell, howled his mother. They have come to drag him away down into the fiery pits. Nathaniel was starting to believe her. The church stank of rotten eggs, and scorching wind overturned the pews and torn off the sign on the door to the crypt. Closed due to vandalism. Is it magic? Cried Ruth, who had been forced to come along because they didn't have a babysitter. Black magic, screamed her father, gathering the girl into his arms. The iron bolts suddenly snapped back, and the oak door crashed open, revealing the blackness of the crypt beyond the blackness that echoed with vengeful howls, and the familiar sound of wet clay. Slapped onto marble with horror, the boy realized that it was sticky feet climbing the steps from the crypt. Now he was scared. What he had unleashed, he had only stolen a little wax to get himself a girlfriend. He hadn't meant to do any harm. That's what they all say. If only me monsters would realize that little less haste means a little more life. One by one, the waxwork dummies scraped their heavy limbs over the top step and fell out into the church like a chorus line of the living dead. Celebrities without eyes, ears, noses, hands, feet stumbled across the pews and wailed, "Give us back our wax!" All of a sudden, as if a confession might make things better, Nathaniel shouted, "I didn't mean to lie! I only took it for my hair!" A zombified Jordan expanded fingers hand and cried out her eyes. "Where's my peepers?" Nathaniel backed away as the Mitchell brothers pushed her aside and came after him, their ears without a look that looked like boiled eggs. "Stay away!" shouted Nathaniel. He tripped on the altar step and fell onto his back. But still, the figures came looking for revenge. David and Victoria Beckham, Wayne Rooney, Sir Steve Redgrave, Ellen MacArthur, and Jose Mericho. It was a wax celebrity attack, and there could only be one winner. "Mother! Father!" cried Nathaniel. "Save me!" But his parents were on their knees praying. He felt waxy fingers digging into his flesh and scrambled backwards into the altar table, was pressing against his shoulder blades. The altar table laid for communion with its candle burning, the candle made from wax. Wax! The main component of Nathaniel's hair, and of course, firelighters. There was a whoomph, like the sound of petrol catching fire, as Nathaniel thrust the altar candle into the spud-like face of baby Jesus Wayne Rooney's head, ignited like an Olympic torch, and set fire to all the other celebrities around him. They flared brightly, blazed briefly, then quickly melted away within seconds. Their wailing had been reduced to a tiny bubbling gurgle as they liquefied into a deep pool of blood-red wax. "Phew!" said Ruth, jumping out of her father's arms and splashing around in the waxy puddle. "That was close." It was close. Too close for Nathaniel's parents. They were so horrified at how close they had come to losing their son that they had a change of heart. They did not rebuild the kingdom of wax. In fact, they gave up on God, stopped going to church, and started a pot-holing school in climbing. As for Nathaniel, he was allowed to have as many girlfriends as he liked. But it wasn't quite as simple as that, because the wax had waterproofed his hair. Nathaniel couldn't wash it, and because he couldn't wash it, his hair, it stunk like a pair of fast bowler's socks. And because his hair stank like a pair of fast bowler's socks, girls avoided him like the plague. It was ironic, therefore, that the one tweak he had made to his looks in order to make himself attractive to girls had ultimately repulsed them. It was even more ironic that on his 14th birthday, as he leaned forward to blow out the candles on his birthday cake, one of the candles should kiss his waxy fringe. It caught fire like a candle wick. He flared brightly, blazed briefly, then quickly melted away in less than 6 seconds later. Nathaniel had liquefied into a deep pool of blood-red wax. His mother and father had been wrong. It wasn't the flames of the eternal damnation that consumed him, but a fire born of hormones and vanity, theft and deception, misapplied hair wax. And that, as they say, was Nathaniel, was waxed forever and ever. Amen. Here endeth the lesson. So Nathaniel did burn his fingers, and all the rest of him. The end.